passengers.
All right.
What are the three phases of matter that exist on Earth? Solid, liquid, and gas.
Maybe B, vapor?
Vapor, yeah. Yeah, it should be B, solid liquid vapor for 2.
Oh, number 3.
Yep.
What is the difference between heat and temperature? D. Heat.
D, yeah. Heat is the amount of energy in the system, while temperature is measured over average kinetic energy particles in the system. So, yeah, we're good. Number 4.
Number 4, what is the 928 D? The heat needed to transform a substance from one state to another.
Mm-hmm.
Air conditioning system used excess heat. I put B.
B. To cool air.
Which one did you get?
I put B.
B? Yeah, to cool the air? Yeah, okay. Good.
What does humidity refer to? I put C.
You put D?
C.
C.
Cat.
Oh, you said C? Okay, yeah. Amount of water present in the air. All right.
What is relative humidity? A.
Yes, it is. Moisture present compared to how much it can hold at temperature. Okay. We're back to you, up front.
What is heating load? The amount of heat energy that must be added to a system?
Okay?
How can cooling load be achieved? I guess through condensation water.
You guessed.
Is that it?
No, that is not it.
C.
Is it E?
Anybody get C?
Yeah,
Okay,
and I marked it off wrong.
okay. C for 9, all right.
What was a ton of air conditioning originally defined as? I really don't know.
Interesting question, right?
Yeah.
You've heard home air conditioning systems referred to in tons, right?
Mhm.
Have you ever, yeah? Anybody get the answer to that one?
Mm-mm.
No?
I guess D.
It is D. Yep. All right, 11.
What are the 3 methods of cooling space? Yes, A.
A is correct. Number 12.
What is the main purpose of air conditioning in a vehicle? I put C.
C is right.
How does adding heat to solids affect their state? I put B.
They become fluids.
A is what we're looking for 13. Okay, 14.
What is the effect of humid air on temperature perception? C.
What's that?
C.
C? It makes the day feel hotter regardless of temperature. That is your perception of humidity in the air, yeah. So C for 14.
What is the purpose of a cabin filter in a vehicle's air conditioning system? B, to trap dust and other
That
contaminants.
should be an easy question, right? All right. Everybody, you good on that? Kinda?
Some more.
What was this?
B for 15, is that the one you're asking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's familiar with cabin filters, right?
Yes.
Just the air filter that filters the air before it comes through the vents in your heating and air conditioning system. Okay, should be on page 750, hopefully. We're gonna go ahead and get this going here. We're gonna just show you and describe how your heating and ventilation and air conditioning system works in your car. Parts and operation of the heating system. Heating system's pretty simple. It really just consists of the heater core, blower motor, stuff like that. But heating system's pretty simple in the car. Air conditioning a little bit more complicated, but still pretty easy to figure out. We're going to go through the refrigeration cycle, operation expansion valve system, orifice tube systems, thermostatic control. So there's different types of air conditioning systems as far as the way they're designed. If a vehicle has an expansion valve system, it won't have an orifice tube, and if it has an orifice tube, it's not going to have expansion valve. It's not going to have both. Okay.
It will not have the expansion and the what, I'm sorry? You said it really fast.
Okay, so an AC system will not have an expansion valve and an orifice tube. It's going to be one or the other. Expansion valve is a variable flow valve for refrigerant. An orifice tube is a fixed orifice, and it doesn't regulate the temperature. They do what they call a cycling clutch orifice tube system. You'll hear that term CCOT. Okay, cycling clutch orifice tube. That means the compressor shuts on and off to regulate refrigerant flow. The expansion valve just will change the metering because it's a variable valve.
So on number 2 on the test, I technically wasn't wrong.
Yeah, the
because
book
vapor and
says
gas are the same thing, but
750.
yeah, I see it. I'm just saying, like, I technically wasn't wrong.
Okay, where's that at?
At the bottom of 750 on the left.
Oh, okay,
Solid, liquid, or vapor, and in parentheses gas.
okay. So I guess either one of those would work. All right. So you can give yourself credit for that question. All right, discuss refrigerants used and their impact on the environment. Anybody know what refrigerant that they use in the cars is now? It was changed a few years ago.
It's a oh shit.
This is the most popular. R134A, that's been used
134.
since '94. What they use now is 1234YF, that's the new system. That's the new refrigerant that they started using maybe 5 years ago. So this is what most of the newer cars will have, but this is the most popular. This one's been around since '94. They phased it out about 5 years ago, something like that. Okay?
Yeah, because some of the older cars still take the 134, and some mechanics are having an issue with the newer cars taking the new refrigerant and them not having that in stock.
Yeah, the 1234YF is expensive, and, you know, again, when you're in the shop, you're gonna have two different refrigerant recovery machines. One for 134A, one for 1234YF. You won't interchange them. You'll just use the machine for the system that the car has. Okay. Functions of refrigerant oil. Your refrigerant that's in your AC system will have a little bit of oil in it. And the purpose of the oil is to lubricate the compressor, okay? Condensers, evaporators, we'll go through those. Function of receiver, dryers, accumulators, refrigerant lines, hoses, your thermostatic expansion valve, and fixed orifice tube again. We'll get to this, but if the system has a expansion valve, it's going to have a receiver dryer. If it has a orifice tube, it's going to have an accumulator, okay? We'll get to that though. In fact, I'll print out a diagram of AC system and refrigerant cycle. It's in the book, but I think I have some in the office I can print out for you. That helps you kind of understand how the system works. We'll also watch a YouTube video. There's a pretty good YouTube video that kind of explains the refrigeration cycle that we'll watch probably after this chapter then. Okay, here's our matters found in 3 states. Solid substance cannot be compressed, has a strong resistance flow. Liquid is a substance that cannot be compressed. Vapor is a substance can be easily compressed, has no resistance, flow, no fixed volume. Those are your changes of state. Now, refrigerant changes states as it flows through the system. That's why they go through this, okay? And when we get to a refrigeration cycle, you'll see how that works. You see better from over there?
Yeah, I see that.
Okay, good. All right, we went through this a little bit on that little quiz there, right? Heat and temperature. Molecules of substance tend to vibrate rapidly in all directions. This disorganized energy is called heat. Temperature is measured in degrees. Heat is measured in calories. Anybody know that? Did they teach you that in culinary school? No?
No, but it makes sense because when you exercise, you burn off calories.
Mm-hmm. Heat is also measured in BTUs. I'm sure everybody's heard of that. BTU stands for British thermal units. And we discussed latent heat a little bit in that quiz where it tells you that it's the extra heat that needed to transform a substance from one state to another. All right, temperature, volume, pressure of vapor. A vapor obviously has no fixed volume. Increasing the temperature of it while keeping the volume in a confined space increases the pressure. Increasing the pressure by compressing a vapor increases the temperature as well. All right, our pressure-temperature relationships. Temperature at which liquid boils and vapor condenses rises and falls with the pressure. So what does this mean? What does that first part there mean?
You're talking about the temperature at which the liquid boils?
Well, because as the pressure increases, so does as the temperature increases, so does the pressure.
So the pressure of the system will affect the temperature of it, right?
Yeah.
That's why it says it rises and falls with the pressure, depending on which, okay. Pressure in a sealed system that contains both liquid and vapor rises and falls with the temperature. And your air conditioning system will contain both a liquid and a vapor as the refrigerant flows through the system.
That's why it gets pressurized.
Yeah,
Well, one, to make sure that there's no leak, and then also to
the-
make sure
The main component in an air conditioning system is what?
the fan.
No. What's the main component in an air conditioning system?
The refrigerant,
What?
filter,
Can't hear you.
filter,
Filter?
yeah.
No, main component. The thing that gets the whole system working that it won't work without.
The motor.
Electricity.
Okay, kind of. It's called a compressor.
Okay.
Okay?
I should
Okay.
have said
The compressor is the main thing. That's what gets everything started working, okay? That's what moves the refrigerant, that's what creates pressure, okay? Compressor is the main component in an air conditioning system. Okay, humidity we talked about for a minute. Everybody should know what humidity is. That shouldn't be unfamiliar to anybody. It's the amount of water vapor present in the air. There's things called absolute and relative humidity, and they're a little bit different. Absolute humidity is a measurement of the weight of water vapor in a given volume of air. Relative humidity is the percentage of moisture in the air compared to how much moisture it's capable of. Obviously, metal is a good conductor of heat. Anybody that's heated something metal, you'll know that no matter which end you heat, it's going to get hot. Go all the way through, right? Ever notice a black car is hotter than a white car, or a yellow car, or a blue car?
Black goes over his heat.
Yeah.
It's my car.
Okay, water can be found in 3 different states. Solid, as in ice, liquid, normally vapor if it boils. The extra heat required to change a standard amount of water at its boiling point to a vapor is called the latent heat of vaporization. Now, you don't nearly have to worry about this. You don't have to know the numbers. You don't have to know the grams, the calories, all that kind of stuff. Just giving you an idea of how that works. Everybody knows where water boils, right? If it's not under pressure, it's about 212 degrees. If it's under pressure, obviously the boiling point goes up, which is why your car doesn't boil over at 212 degrees when the coolant temperature gets to 212 degrees. Otherwise, it would, right? You got ethylene glycol mixed, your coolant and your water, right? So that brings the boiling point up, plus the pressure in the system brings it up. Otherwise, the car wouldn't be able to run past 212 degrees, it would just boil over. Okay. Obviously, water volume reduces as it boils, turns to steam. And if you keep boiling a pan of water on the stove, pretty soon there'll be no water left. And you just burn the pan up, right? You ever done that while you were cooking?
Oh,
Ever forgot about something on the stove? No, he's like, no. Yeah, yeah. Yep. All right, this is used where you move, you don't have to worry about this. You won't. I've never even seen one of those. I don't know if you guys have. Use maybe relative humidity, digital meter that reads both temperature and humidity. Low-cost tool used when servicing air conditioning. I've actually never seen anybody use one of those, but apparently they exist. All right. As you know, your air conditioning system has a case inside the car that pretty much holds all of the things that direct the airflow, the blower motor, the vents, that kind of stuff. This kind of gives you an idea where everything's located on the car. If you look at this picture real quick, you'll notice that this is a, what type of system?
TXV?
Stands for thermal expansion valve, okay? They don't use an E, they just use an X, okay? Thermal expansion valve, and it's going to have a receiver dryer. These two guys are gonna go together, okay? If this was an orifice tube system, it would have an accumulator and it would be located over here. Receiver dryer is usually part of the condenser. Sometimes they can be a separate piece, but they decided it would be a good idea to just make the receiver dryer and the compressor kind of all one unit. So if you needed to replace the receiver dryer in this car, you'd have to replace the whole condenser. It's not a separate piece anymore on a lot of cars. All right, your heating system. It is designed to heat you when it's cold outside, right? Passenger comfort when heat is needed for defrost of the windows, something like that. As you can see, there's not a whole lot to it. Works off of the heat from your coolant temperature as your car warms up. Notice your heater doesn't work when you first start your car.
Yep.
Engine has to warm up in order for the heater to work. Okay, basically all there is just the hoses from the engine to the heater core. Some will have a heater control valve, and then the blower motor, which is not separate from the HVAC system in general. The blower motor is for the heat and the air conditioner, okay? There's only one, unless it has rear climate control. If you have an SUV or a bigger vehicle, something like that, that has rear climate control, it's gonna have 2 blower motors, 2 heater cores. We'll get into that as well. All right. This is just showing the flow of the air through your system when it's placed in the heat position. So you can see by what they got shown here, what's going on here. I believe that's in the book as well.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? Yeah, okay.
753.
Somewhere, right? Oh, yeah, I see it. I see it. Okay, on the previous page here, did anybody read the green box where it has, talks about frequently asked question?
What is an auxiliary electric water pump?
No, the one on 751.
750.
Why is liquid sprayed from a can cold?
Mm-hmm. Why is that? Anybody know?
No.
What happened? Which one did you read? Oh, why is liquid sprayed from a can cold?
Oh, because you're releasing the pressure and it decompresses.
So yeah, basically, and that, yeah, easiest description of that is just a rapid decompression when it causes it to.
Bird cleaner.
Yeah, right. You ever charge an air conditioning system with just the cans that you buy in the store? No. Okay, as the refrigerant goes into the system, that can will actually freeze up. Now,
I forgot what it was, but this was stupid. I think it was, I forgot what it was. It was some type of spray. If you held it upside down and then sprayed it, it was like freeze your hand.
Oh, really?
So I didn't think it was real. I did it, and my fingertip was like
Isn't it propane?
solid for. No, it wasn't propane. It was in a little sprayable can. I just forgot what it was, but it was like it froze my fingertip for a little bit. I think it was some type of hairspray or something. It fucking hurt.
yeah, I bet you believed it after that, huh?
I don't remember what I did with the rest of the can.
Okay, some vehicles have an auxiliary electric water pump. On page 752, there's a frequently asked question that will tell you what that is.
What page?
752, the green box on the bottom.
Mhm.
What is an auxiliary electric water pump? Some vehicles will have that. Purpose of it is to help warm the interior of the vehicle by circulating coolant from the engine through the heater core when the engine is at idle speed. Idle speed, the water pump does not circulate sufficient quantity of coolant to get through the heater core. You won't see that very often, but some vehicles will have auxiliary electric water pump. All right. Where's the heater core located on a vehicle? Somebody asked you where the heater core was on your car, what would you say?
It's
On the bottom,
On the bottom?
on the side, on the bottom side.
On the passenger side?
I'm sorry?
On the passenger side?
Okay, it is on the passenger side.
It's on the housing.
It's inside that HVAC housing, yeah, you see it in the picture there. So in order to replace the heater core on most vehicles, it's a major operation. Okay, you gotta remove the dash. A lot of times it's a big job. Luckily, these don't leak a lot. Sometimes it does. If it does, it's typically a pretty big job. Okay, obviously this, you're looking at inside the car. The heater hose connections go out here, which you would see under the hood. That's where your heater hoses go into the firewall. Those heater hoses are directing coolant right into your heater core, okay? Heater core is just like a mini radiator, okay? It doesn't cool anything, it just kind of looks like a small radiator. Okay. Now we're going to go through the refrigeration cycle. So, let me see here. There's actually quite a few pretty good videos for this that we'll watch as we're going through this. I don't see the one I want.
Maybe if you put 3D, like three-dimensional.
What's that?
Maybe if you type in 3D.
I was looking for one in particular, maybe I'll be able to find it later, break time or something like that, but it's only about, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 minutes, but it's pretty good. Let's try this. Okay. This is actually the one right here I was looking
Why
for.
won't you work?
Hello, my name is Mike Quest, President and co-founder of Avalanche Products. I'd like to help you better understand how an auto air conditioning system works, as well bring to your attention a possible issue with a TXV valve found on certain vehicles. I'd also like to help you avoid the possible damage due to overcharging. We have designed a basic auto air conditioning system diagram to show you the flow of refrigerant throughout the AC system. The compressor is the workhorse of the system and is where we'll start. It receives cool, low-pressure gas, which is compressed into a high-pressure, high-temperature gas and pumped out of the discharge side of the compressor and flows into the condenser. This high-pressure, high-temperature gas is shown as red with bubbles, indicating it's in a gas state. The condenser does just that. Cool air flows across the condenser, cooling the high-pressure, high-temperature gas, turning it into a high-pressure liquid. As you can see, the gas remains red, high pressure, but changes to arrows indicating it's changed to a liquid. The high-pressure liquid flows through the receiver dryer.
Okay. Can you see the difference that he's talking about here? See where this is actually different than this? This is supposed to represent like bubbles, and this, when it turns to arrow, is supposed to represent liquid. It's changed state in the condenser. Okay? Just so you know, this is not just all the same. It actually changes. So you got to pay attention to where it's a bubble and where it's an arrow. It changes states there.
As it
Okay?
cycles through.
Okay? Yeah.
Having a desiccant bag inside it to filter and absorb small amounts of moisture that may contaminate the refrigerant. On the AC system using an orifice tube, the receiver dryer is replaced with an accumulator, which is located between the evaporator and the compressor.
Okay. When we go through this and when we go through test questions and stuff like that, they're gonna try to throw you off or try to make sure you understand the difference. You might get a test question that asks something about a certain type of system, and maybe 3 of the answers you would just look at and go, well, those aren't even possible because this is a TXV system and it doesn't have an accumulator or whatever, or an orifice tube, okay? So you're gonna have to know which system uses what, where they're located, and they're also gonna ask you questions about what is the state of the refrigerant here, or here, or here, or here, or here. And you have to know, okay?
The high side service port is located here, between the condenser and the expansion valve or orifice tube. Next, this high pressure liquid passes through the expansion valve, allowing
They're usually pretty much right next to each other. The low pressure tube or port and the high pressure port, they're usually pretty much right next to each other.
They can be, but they can be in totally different spots on some cars.
Which cars? Every car I see, they're like next to each other. Which cars?
Well, if they're next to each other, that's actually not the common. A lot of times they're way far away from each other.
Really?
Yeah, so your high and low side service ports can be located in a lot of different places, depending on the vehicle.
Okay.
But it's still gonna be in that particular part of the system,
Right.
okay? Okay. Those are where you hook your machine up or your gauges to check pressure, stuff like that. You're also gonna have to know pressures, okay?
Allowing it to expand and turn into a low-pressure liquid, as indicated in our color change from red to blue. This low-pressure liquid flows from the expansion valve directly into the evaporator, at which point it begins to boil and turn back into a low-pressure gas, absorbing heat as it does so.
Okay, obviously, when it turns blue, the pressure change happens here, okay? No longer high pressure, it's now low pressure, okay? This is your evaporator core, it's inside the car, okay? The other thing is, you notice it's a gas, this is your low side, high side on your compressor. Sometimes this is called the suction side, this is called the discharge side. You can't compress a liquid, right? This has to be in a gas state when it goes into the compressor. Make sense? If you get liquid in a compressor, it will destroy it.
This chills the walls of the evaporator, and the blower motor pushes this cool air through the vehicle's dashboard vents. As you can see, the liquid arrows turn back into a gas as indicated by bubbles. The low side service port is located here, between the expansion valve and the compressor. The low pressure gas then returns to the compressor for another cycle. A number of car manufacturers started using a thermal expansion valve, or a TXV, to make the air conditioner operate more efficiently and give better cooling. The TXV system, as shown in our diagram, has a small temperature bowl located at the outlet of the evaporator, which continually adjusts the refrigerant flow through the expansion valve and into the evaporator based on the evaporator's temperature and pressure. Because the evaporator's outlet temperature is used to regulate the TXV valve, it sets a maximum operating pressure at the evaporator outlet. It then flows through the low side service port, where in many cases is being measured by low side gauge only to charge the system. As refrigerant is added, the pressure on the low side rises until it reaches its maximum operating pressure, which is typically 35 psi or lower. If this pressure level is below the gauge's established correct fill, which is typically over 35 psi, even though the system is fully charged, adding additional refrigerant will not show on the low side pressure gauge, but will build up on the high side and can only be measured using a high side gauge.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it right here for a minute, because you go into your local AutoZone or O'Reilly Auto Parts and you buy one of those AC charge things, got the gauge on it, they charge you ridiculous money for it. You hook it up to your car and it's doing you absolutely no good because of what he just said. Most of the time, people think if my air conditioner isn't working right, it just needs Freon or refrigerant, okay? It's just Freon, it's just a short name for refrigerant, okay? So they go buy this charge kit, they put more in it. Most of the time it doesn't work. A lot of times, all they've done is overcharge the system. And the only thing they give you is a low side gauge, and you can't tell that you overcharged it. Don't do it, those things are a waste of money.
In these cases, using only a low side gauge can potentially cause too much refrigerant to be added and result in damage to the compressor or other problems associated with overcharging. Well, I trust this has been helpful. From all of us at Avalanche Products, we want to thank you for your business.
All right. The refrigeration cycle should make a little more sense now, okay? Okay. The liquid refrigerant evaporates into a small radiator type unit called the evaporator. Where's the evaporator located? You have to know the location of all these components too. Where would you find this? Passenger side of the car on the inside, right? You can't see it. It's encased in the HVAC case where the heater core is and all that kind of stuff, okay? So yeah, it's gonna be inside the car, passenger side.
Is it okay based on the figure on page 755, for me personally, to say that the evaporator is located on the low pressure side and the condenser is located on the high pressure side?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you look at that picture on 755 on the top, you can see that's not really a good drawing of a compressor, but that is your compressor, okay? You can see it in the wording there. So you see where it says suction side, discharge side, or suction line, discharge line?
Yep.
That's the same thing as high pressure, low pressure, okay? The suction side's a low pressure, the discharge is a high pressure. And yes, after it goes from the compressor, it goes obviously clockwise if you're looking at this diagram like we saw up here. First place it goes to the condenser, then if it's an expansion valve system, which you see here, receiver dryer, into the evaporator, which is inside the car. Receiver dryer is going to be out by the condenser, or maybe even part of the condenser. There's probably, yeah. There's also a diagram of the other type that has a fixed orifice too, which we will get to as well. Okay, the compressor compresses that low pressure refrigerant into a high pressure gas, forces it through the system. High pressure gas flows into the condenser. High pressure gas changes form from a high pressure liquid as the heat is removed. If your cooling fan does not work in the summertime when you turn your air conditioner on, your air conditioner will not work. If you turn your air conditioner on in the summertime, if you've noticed, you're going to hear the fan come on a few seconds later, whether the engine's warmed up or not. You have to have airflow across the condenser or the system will not work. Okay? High pressure liquid then flows through a device that meters the flow, whether it's a fixed orifice tube or a thermal expansion valve. When the pressure of the liquid drops, it causes the refrigerant to vaporize. Air is blown through the evaporator by the blower motor. The air is cooled as heat is removed from the outside air to the refrigerant into the evaporator. That is basically the cycle and how it works and what state the refrigerant is in at each point. You remember in that video where he said the thermal expansion valve will have a temperature bulb, a probe located on the evaporator outlet. You got to remember that. You also got to remember that some thermal expansion valves do not have a separate temperature bulb or probe, okay? And if it doesn't, it will look kind of like this. They call it like an H block. It's going to have actually 4 ports on it, whereas the other type only have 2, and it's going to have a temperature probe on the evaporator outlet too. And it uses that temperature of the evaporator outlet to regulate that orifice in there, because this is a variable orifice. It regulates refrigerant flow. Okay, compressor provides the mechanical force needed to pressurize the refrigerant. This is just a drawing of a basic AC compressor. There's different types, but just kind of shows you the pieces and parts inside the compressor. Basically, it works kind of like an engine, just got pistons in it. This one uses what they call a swash plate. As this rotates, this obviously does this, right? And it pushes. This would be a piston. Okay, kind of works like a miniature engine. In fact, I think you'll get to see it work here. maybe. Okay, guess not. Okay, your condenser, that is located where?
In the HVAC system, right?
The evaporator's inside the car. We just talked about. Where's the condenser at?
In the HVAC system.
Okay, but where on the car? Where would you find the
Be on
condenser?
the motor.
On the passenger side.
Sometimes inside the refrigerator,
What's that?
in front of the car.
Right behind the grill, right in front of the radiator. Okay? Right in front of the radiator, right behind the grill. When you look through the grill of the car, first thing you can see is the AC condenser. Unless it's turbocharged and it's got an intercooler on it, that may be first condenser behind that, then the radiator. Okay. Condenser changes the refrigerant vapor by transferring heat to the air which flows between the fins.
You said it right when we look at the radiator was gonna be here.
What's that?
You said it right when we look at where the radiator is.
Yeah, if you look at the front of a car, you don't have to have the hood open. If you just look at the front of a car, okay, you got the grill, most of them have some sort of grill for airflow, right? That's the first thing you're gonna see back there, that with all the little fins in it, looks like a smaller radiator, that's the AC condenser, okay? Okay. Just showing you how heat transfer, I think this animation didn't work, some of these aren't working for some reason. Or maybe this is working and I wasn't watching. Remember I said you're gonna have to know what pressures, what proper pressures were and what improper pressures mean is going on in the system. You should be able to diagnose an AC system by hooking gauges up to it, reading the low, high and low side pressures. Okay? Anybody know what the normal high and low side pressures are in an AC system? No?
No.
No idea?
I'm
Okay.
sorry, I missed the question I was reading.
That's all right. I said, do you have any idea what the normal high and low side pressures are on an air conditioning system?
I should, but no, I do not recall. No, oh, wait a minute, hold on. They have to hold, I know within the green, and I think that's, I wanna say 10 PSI, but I'm pretty sure that's wrong.
How about we put high in red and the low in the blue? How about that?
I know they have to hold, what are the numbers? I forget.
Now, this can vary a little bit, but basically, this is about what you're gonna see. Maybe 220 rise height. It's gonna vary depending on ambient temperature, but this is gonna be the area that you're gonna see your high and low side pressures. We'll just call this 200. Okay? Remember when we were watching the video, it showed the little gauge he had on the low side, and it was reading somewhere around 30, 35. That's about normal. Shouldn't really go any higher than that. Okay, I'm gonna go through the expansion valve system now. And again, there's two different types, fixed orifice tube, thermal expansion valve, or TXV. All right? Expansion valve, it is located to the inlet of the evaporator, controls the amount of flow of refrigerant into the evaporator. How does it do that? Anybody know? We saw it in the video, we talked about it a minute ago. How does this regulate the amount of refrigerant that flows through the evaporator? No idea?
Isn't it because that, what's up on it, there's like a thing next to it? So,
Because of the temperature probe thing you were talking about?
yeah.
Okay. Okay, so remember in the video, it talked about one type of thermal expansion valve that had the temperature probe on it? Yeah, and that the temperature probe is measuring the evaporator outlet temperature. So based on that, it's going to vary the orifice or hole that the refrigerant flows through in there. So that's how it does it, yeah, by monitoring that temperature. So it knows, should I give more or less? It's just a variable orifice. Orifice is just an opening where the refrigerant flows through, okay? So, yeah. Expansion valve just varies the flow based on the temperature of the outlet of the evaporator. This is called a thermostatic expansion valve systems. Sometimes you'll see it abbreviated as TEV, but for most of the time you'll see it as TXV, all right? But if you see TEV, it's the same thing. Most of the time they use the X. Okay, here's a diagram, same thing you see in the book. This is your typical AC system that uses expansion valve. Temperature bulb is attached to the outlet of the evaporator to control the amount of refrigerant flowing into the evaporator. This one will have, as I mentioned before, this thermal expansion valve will only have two ports, one in, one out. The H block type has four, meaning two in, two out, and it doesn't use a separate temperature probe. It's done right inside the expansion valve. Most systems now use the thermal expansion valve. You don't see a whole lot of orifice tube systems, even though it says many air conditioning systems today use a fixed orifice tube. Don't really see a lot of that. Remember I said you're going to see the term CCOT, cycling clutch orifice tube. So since the orifice tube is a fixed orifice, meaning it doesn't change in sizes, right? So it can't regulate the flow into the evaporator through that. What it does is it turns the compressor on and off. The compressor will actually cycle. That's what they call it, a cycling clutch orifice tube system. That's what CCOT is, okay? Refrigerant is controlled by the cycling of the compressor on and off through a low pressure switch. That is basically an orifice tube system.
So the CCOT turns the compressor on and off.
Yeah, through a low pressure switch, yeah. It's the only way it can regulate the flow because the orifice tube, fixed orifice tube does not change in size. It can't regulate the flow itself. So it's the flow is regulated by turning the compressor on and off. Typical system that uses a cycling clutch orifice tube system. What do you notice different about this? There is no
Receiver dryer.
receiver dryer, exactly. Uses an accumulator instead. These are things that you're going to have to remember because the test questions will try to make you try to fool you on that, and just to make sure you know the difference. This is a orifice tube. That's obviously about 50 times the actual size of one, but that's what it looks like. I've seen people put those in backwards. If you ever change one of those, you pay attention, okay? See where it says to evaporator, to condenser? When you take this out, it's actually in a hard line. There's gonna be where the line separates. This is gonna be inside there. There's a special tool that you can grab these with and just pull it out. Make sure you put it back in the right way. I had somebody bring me a car a while back, summertime, the air conditioner wasn't working. I checked it out and found out somebody put the orifice tube in backwards.
Quick question. Do we need to know about the, condensate line? Often evaporator drain hose,
Where are you at?
page 760 on the bottom. It says, note if the carpet or floor of the vehicle is wet on the passenger side, the cause is often a clogged evaporator drain hose. The opening called the condensate line is frequently clogged with mud, road debris. Hey, I've seen that before.
What page are you on?
760?
Oh, 760.
Am I too far ahead? No, I'm not.
No, you're all right. Okay. If the carpet or the floor is wet on the passenger side of the vehicle, you have to be careful with this. If the floor is wet on the passenger side of your vehicle, the heater core could be leaking, or it could be this. Your evaporator, have you ever noticed, let's say it's a hot day and it's kind of humid, and you got the air conditioner on in your house or wherever, and you go outside and you see water running down wherever your air conditioner is, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is just the condensation running off. That's normal. There's nothing wrong with it. You ever see a car drip water in the summertime when it's humid? I mean, they will, if the air conditioner's on, it will sit there and it'll just drip water.
A lot of people think their car is leaking oil or something.
Right.
and yeah.
And you try to tell them, there's nothing wrong with your car. Yeah, but it's leaking. No, it's not. Okay? If that gets plugged up, that will end up leaking inside your car. If that drain tube, that's all that is.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. It's that drain
So,
tube. Okay.
this statement here may show up in a test question, but the thing is, if you have the floor wet in the passenger side of your car, it could be either one. If the heater core leaks, you're gonna get coolant on the passenger side. Your passenger, if somebody's riding in your car, is gonna get coolant on their shoes, okay? The heater core leaks, that's what's gonna happen. But you should obviously be able to tell the difference between coolant and water, okay? So, either one would cause that floor to be wet there. Okay, so, the question and the answer are backwards on this. So if you weren't looking, I just had the answer up here, but now we're gonna actually show the question, because for some reason I got these backwards. So, what is the answer to this question? No? Drawing a blank on this?
Well, I know I'm lost.
Remember, a car is not gonna have both of these. It's gonna be one or the other. What do? They wanna know what the purpose of those things are.
You said the orifice tube with the holes.
We've been talking about it for a while. Everybody should know the answer to this.
Well, I know
What'd you say?
You said the orifice tube was like the hole that allows the,
The orifice tube is just a fixed orifice, right? It doesn't vary in size, right? The expansion valve does. It will vary the size of the orifice inside of it to allow the flow of refrigerant to either be slowed down or increased or whatever.
Well, the expansion valve has to do with the receiver driver.
Okay, well, it does, but they're not asking that. They're just asking what the purpose of these things are. And remember, a car is not gonna have both of these. It's either gonna be this system or this system.
Is it for the refrigerant? The storage of the refrigerant?
Not storage.
But the
The pictures here look like
Hello?
it converts heat into cooling.
The refrigerant flows to this orifice. It expands inside the evaporator where it absorbs heat and expands it into low pressure gas.
Okay.
Translate to English.
I was ready to do it. I have no
Okay,
idea.
it's actually a simple answer. I think you're overthinking it. It regulates the flow of refrigerant and it also separates the high and low side pressures of the system. So if you look at these pictures here, you know how they have different colors for different pressures, right? You'll notice it will separate the high and low side, and it does regulate the flow of refrigerant. Okay, that's only a partial answer, actually. Okay. Thermostatic control. Commonly used method to control evaporator temperature is to use a thermostat to control the compressor. Air conditioning compressors use an electromagnetic clutch. When the thermostat senses that the temperature is near freezing, the switch opens the electrical circuit to the compressor. There is a thermostatic control as well. Compressor with electromagnetic clutch. All right. Your refrigerants. R12 has been gone for a long time. 93, I think, was the last car produced with R12 in it. See where it says CFC12? Sometimes that's the technical name for it. Usually we just use the R, right? This is the most popular. And the 1234YF is what we're using now, which actually isn't on this particular slide. CFC is just chlorofluorocarbon. Okay, this is a typical 30-pound container of 134A. And so you can't confuse them. It's in a blue tank. The 1234YF is in a white tank. Okay. We don't have to worry too much about this. This just tells you the Clean Air Act, and basically, if you're working on a refrigeration system, you are supposed to be trained and certified. Recovery and recycling equipment must be used. Each shop must comply with EPA rules. You will have recovery machines in all of the shops, so you don't have to worry about that. If you have to service an air conditioning system, which means you have to open the system, it has to be discharged, and you can't just let it out into the air. It happens, but you're not supposed to do it. And you don't have to. If you're at the shop, you hook the machine up to it, you hit the button that says recover, it pulls the refrigerant out of it, then you can take the system apart. Okay? You can't open the system unless it's been discharged, or you're going to be extremely sorry that you did, because it's under high pressure, and it won't be a good thing. Okay. This is our little lesson on ozone layer and the effects of CFC on it, which is why they want the refrigerant recovered, all that kind of stuff. How the ozone is destroyed, we don't really have to worry too much about. They're going to be quizzed on that, all right? This is your 1234YF. This is a new refrigerant. It's been It was required starting in 2021. Remember, this means model year, if you see that, all right? Some cars had it before that, but it was required after that. You'll see it in some 18, 19, 20 vehicles because the manufacturers know what's coming. So a lot of them, they get a head start on it. Well, we have to get rid of the 134A by this year. We're just going to go ahead and implement it now. So every car after 2021 will have that, but some before that will. The only way you're going to know is to look at the label underneath the hood. It will tell you what refrigerant it takes, how much it holds, how much oil it holds, all that stuff. .124OF is mildly flammable. Well, it's not going to escape into the air, so you don't really have to worry about that. And again, it's going to be in a white container, red lettering. System's going to have a little bit of oil in it. Okay? If it gets too much oil in it, it will not work right. If it gets not enough oil in it, the compressor is going to seize. Oil is carried by the refrigerant through the various components, often the only source of lubrication for the compressor. They use what they call a PAG oil, P-A-G. You'll see that, you can buy that in the auto parts stores. You see these little bottles that say PAG oil and they have different numbers on them. It refers to that polyalkyl glycol. Has to be that synthetic PAG oil. Viscosity will vary, that's what the number on it is. Always use whatever it says to use. Just showing you different types of refrigerant oil. Now we get to the condenser. The condenser is like a radiator because it's designed to radiate heat from the refrigerant to the outside air. Located in front of your radiator, it looks kind of like a radiator. As heat travels into the air, high pressure gas refrigerant changes state, becomes a high pressure liquid. It does that in the condenser. What is the state of the refrigerant as it enters the condenser?
It's hot.
What is the state of the refrigerant as it enters the condenser?
The,
It's right in front of you.
Vapor,
Sorry?
the state of,
What's the state of the refrigerant as it enters the condenser?
It's a gas.
It's right in front of you. It's a high pressure gas, right?
yeah.
What happens as it flows through the condenser?
It turns into.
It changes state to what? High pressure liquid, okay? It's right there. To help transfer heat, most vehicles equipped with cooling fans there all have cooling fans. If you do not have airflow across the condenser, your air conditioner will not work. How many people have noticed when they're driving around in the summertime, got your air conditioner on, you're at the drive-through at Burger King, you're waiting for your lunch, it's 120 degrees outside, your air conditioner all of a sudden isn't blowing as cold as it was when you were driving down the freeway?
I normally don't turn on the air.
Okay, we'll skip you.
so, they use the same fan that?
Yes, use the same fan, the regular radiator cooling fan, yeah. Reason is you're not getting enough airflow across the condenser. Obviously, when you're driving, you have the benefit of airflow from driving and the fan itself. Okay? When you're sitting still, the air conditioner is never going to work as good as when you're driving, for the most part, when it's really hot outside. Condenser serves the same function for both orifice tube and expansion valve systems. No difference in the condenser. Okay, this is just telling you if you got a broken condenser line, check the engine mounts. Because if engine mounts are broken, the engine obviously moves back and forth more than it's supposed to, and some of those hard lines could get damaged or broken. But Do not repair AC line like you see there. Just replace the hose. Evaporator, where's that at? Where's the evaporator?
Right next to the accumulator?
Well, I'm giving, I want a general answer. Where is it located? Where would you find the evaporator?
On the top of the condenser.
Inside the car or outside the car?
Inside.
Inside, right? Can you see it?
No.
It's inside the car, right? In that whole HVAC case inside the car. That's behind your dash that you can't see. Okay? What did you say?
I said, don't you have to take off the dash to replace it?
Yeah, you do. Same with the heater core. Evaporator's a big job as well. In fact, a lot of times, if a car has, let's say the evaporator's leaking, sometimes, since you gotta go through all that trouble to replace that, sometimes they'll just ask the customer, you wanna replace the heater core at the same time? I'm right there. It's no extra labor. And if the heater core leaks next year, you're gonna have to pay another $1,000 labor to do this again. So a lot of times those are replaced together. It's kinda like the timing belt water pump thing, right? Your car needs a timing belt and it's driven, the water pump is driven off of that. You gotta take it all apart anyway, change the water pump while you're there. Okay, a lot of times the evaporator and the heater core are replaced at the same time because they're so hard to get to. And once you're already there, you might as well do it.
Cause it's gonna go bad anyway, pretty much, right?
What's that?
It's gonna go bad anyway, cause like if
Not
one gives, then the other
necessarily.
one is
I mean-
gonna give, kinda.
It depends on the car, you know, I mean, sometimes cars will last forever and seem like they never have trouble with either one of them, but since you're already there, it's not a bad idea. It's not that much more money and you're not paying the labor, just, you're already there. You know, you might charge them an extra half an hour to, you know, but, you know, what's 50 or 60 bucks or $100 as opposed to 1,000 if you have to do it again, right? So, okay. Purpose of your evaporator is to transfer heat from the air to the refrigerant flowing through it. Your blower motor, that works for both the heater and the air conditioner. There's only one, it works for both. Again, unless it has a rear climate control system, in which case it's gonna have 2 blower motors, 2 heater cores, 2 evaporators, all of that. Blower motor is equipped with a squirrel cage. It's a fan, type of fan that circulates the air. Sometimes that's what they call it. Because the evaporator is cold, usually above freezing, any moisture is removed, lowering the relative humidity. Who knows what FPO means? And why is it on this slide?
No.
Don't feel bad if you don't know,
Don't know.
Is it fan power outlet?
because nobody has been able to figure out what that is. And you said it's what?
Just guess, that's a fan power outlet.
That would fit, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, I can't say if that's a yes or no because I have no idea what that is.
Mhm.
And nobody I've ever asked knows what it is either. I don't know why that's there.
Do you know what it is?
I don't know why it's there either. I don't know what they're, I don't know.
You know, like, what's the point of it?
What's that?
What's like the point of it? It's just
I was hoping at some point, somebody in one of the classes would say, oh, that's this. Nobody's been able to figure out what that is. I guess we still don't know.
No.
Mm.
Okay, receiver dryer, used on an AC system with an expansion valve. Remember that. Also remember that it's located between the condenser and the evaporator. Purpose of it: provides temporary storage for the liquid refrigerant, usually contains a filter to trap debris and a desiccant to remove moisture. Range valve system will store excess refrigerant in a receiver dryer, which is located on the high side liquid section of the system, which is your condenser outlet. Okay, if it has a fixed orifice tube, it's going to use an accumulator. It is located between the evaporator and the compressor. Has a little bit different job, but kind of the same. Prevents liquid refrigerant from entering the compressor, removes moisture, traps debris. This is a typical accumulator on a cycling clutch orifice tube system. As you can see, this is under the hood, close to the evaporator housing, not in front of the radiator by the condenser. It's also going to have a low pressure cycling switch right on the side of it, as you can see right there. It's also going to have your low side service port on it, most likely.
Fuel purchase option, that is the only thing I found for FPL.
Okay. Well, I guess we still don't know. Why is a desiccant needed in automotive air conditioning systems? If you know what that does, you'll know what the purpose of it is in anything.
Desiccant.
You ever open a bottle of some sort of vitamin or pill or whatever, and it's got that little desiccant bag in it?
Absorbs the
Yeah,
moisture.
just to absorb moisture, that's all it does, yeah. Okay, your refrigerant lines and your hoses, some are flexible, some are solid. Aluminum tubing is used for stationary items, such as the condenser, receiver dryer, and that kind of stuff. Rubber lines are used to and from the compressor. Most of them use a non-permeable inside layer material that prevents the loss of refrigerant through the hose itself. You're not supposed to lose refrigerant. In a perfect world, in a good system with no problems, you should never have to recharge your air conditioner. Okay? Refrigerant doesn't deplete itself, it doesn't leak out under normal conditions, it doesn't use itself up, okay?
So why is that so common then?
Well, because we don't live in a perfect world and things happen, parts break, hoses leak, compressors leak, it happens. I'm just saying, if everything is working the way it's supposed to work, the air conditioning system should just continue to work without ever being recharged.
Is that one of the things that sets off, or that is the difference between a higher end vehicle and a lower end vehicle, is that they're made more quality to where parts like that won't go out as bad? I mean, they have their own separate issues, of
Sure.
course, but things that are, I'm seeming to notice, especially working at the Land Rover Jag, is that the lower end vehicles, models like the Hondas and Toyotas, they have these more common issues.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
things that go wrong.
yeah. It's that way with anything though, I mean, you know, kinda get what you pay for. You know, every car has its problems, there's no perfect car out there, I don't care how much money you spend.
Right, right.
But, so, yeah, in a way, that is true. But what I'm getting at is, if everything is working properly, and obviously things break and whatever, you should never have to just, well, it's summertime, it's time to recharge my air conditioner, or service my air conditioner. No. Shouldn't have to do that. Cabin filter, yeah, you don't have to change the refrigerant, you don't have to take it down and say, hey, I need the refrigerant changed in my car. No, you don't.
Even,
Okay?
even if you like maintain a vehicle, like there's still like a little stuff that's gonna give you problems.
Yeah, there's always stuff that's gonna give you problems, but as far as maintenance on the air conditioning system itself, cabin filter, making sure the condenser doesn't get plugged up because it's right behind the grill and it picks up road shit, and plastic bags stick to it, and, you know, stuff like that. Sometimes I've had people bringing cars in the summertime complaining their air conditioner doesn't work. And all that was wrong with it, it sucked up a grocery bag off of the street. And it was blocking the airflow in the condenser. Just pull the bag off of it. So, I'll just give you an example. It's a home air conditioner, but they work the same way. I've had my house for 30 years. Has 2 AC units on it. One of them has never been touched. 30 years, worked perfect. Never been recharged, never done anything to it. If everything is right, you should never have to touch it. Obviously, you gotta replace filters and stuff, but, okay? So there is no yearly maintenance on your air conditioning system.
Do you
Okay.
keep yours covered, or do you blow it out or anything? Do you do anything?
I keep the condenser clean on the outside of the house,
You
sure.
do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
yeah.
that's why.
And
Most
change the
people don't do
filters,
that.
yeah. And same thing with my car. My car is, it's not a dinosaur, but it's 2011, it's got 264,000 miles on it. I've never touched the air conditioner. Never touched it once, and it works perfectly. Never recharged it, never changed a part, never. So, again, it doesn't mean you're never gonna have a problem. It just means, I'm just trying to get the point across that you don't have to do some sort of, okay, well, it's getting to be summertime, I better go have my air conditioner charged or whatever. If it's not working, that's one thing. But if it is, it shouldn't need any type of service other than, again, a cabin filter, which gets pretty dirty sometimes. And making sure that you've got your fans working and that, you know, the air condenser isn't plugged up with road debris or something like that, okay? All right. I'm sorry.
For like AC on the air conditioner, every time you turn off the vehicle, is it always best to just turn off the AC when you're done with the car, because then you have to shut it off?
You know what? That's a good question, because I've been asked that before, and sometimes you know, here's what I do. So, I don't know that it matters either way, but I think it's better to shut the air conditioner off first, then shut the car off. Rather than just shut it off with the compressor on it, blowing full blast or whatever. So, that's what I do. I think it's better that way. So, yeah, I would shut it off before you shut the car off. And then once you start it again, just turn it back on.
It won't affect anything on the air conditioner, right?
What's that?
It won't affect the air conditioner, right?
No, it shouldn't. Yeah. Okay, so you'd have both rigid and solid lines. For obvious reasons, the engine moves around, stuff like that, so you gotta have flexible lines, yeah.
Like, are you supposed to turn the air conditioner off, like, if you're traveling at high speeds?
No,
Oh, really?
yeah. So, let's say, honestly, the air conditioner turns itself off. If you're, not high speed, but high throttle open. So like if you're driving down the road, let's say you're driving down the freeway, 70 miles an hour, whatever, got the air conditioner on, and you decide you wanna go 120 or pass somebody or whatever, and you stick your foot to the floor and you take off. As soon as you open that throttle to 100%, the compressor shuts off. So the air conditioner system will shut itself off. And then when you let off the throttle again, it'll come back on. But it's only off for, you know, that few seconds, so you don't even really notice it. But yeah, It keeps the compressor from overrunning or, revving too high or whatever, right?
I don't know that.
Yeah,
But the AC doesn't do anything about engine power, right? It's still,
it does. It takes a little bit of engine power because you got to turn the compressor.
oh,
Okay, so the belt is on the compressor all the time, right? But it's just spinning around a pulley. So it's not using any power, right? But when you turn the compressor on, it engages the compressor, starts moving the pistons, it starts moving the refrigerant. So it takes a little bit of power, yeah. So, yeah, it does take a little bit of power from the engine to run the air conditioner. The only time that's not true is if you have a hybrid and has an electric AC compressor. Okay, some of those have electric AC compressors because the internal combustion engine isn't always running. So, okay. Smokestack expansion valve system uses that temperature sensor sensitive bulb located on the evaporator tube outlet. That pressure sensitive diaphragm inside there is used to control the size of that variable orifice. Regulates the rate at which the liquid refrigerant flows into the evaporator. And that's what it would look like if it had that separate temperature probe on it. Again, it's just going to have one in, one out, the other type. It's the H block. It's going to have 2 in, 2 out. And it has that temperature sensor built right into it, so it won't have that extra capillary tube and sensing bulb on it. Just show you how it works inside. It's got a slot cut in the ball seat inside the expansion valve. Permits a small amount of refrigerant and oil to pass through it at all times, even when it's closed. So it's never completely closed. This flow of oil through the system is necessary to make sure the compressor has the oil that it needs. Picture of the capillary tube sensing probe. Pressure from that pushes on the spring to open the diaphragm. As the pressure on the capillary tube contracts, pressure is reduced, and the valve is allowed to close. This is the other type. This is the H block. This one has the temperature sensing unit all built into it, so it won't have that separate tube and sensing bulb. As you can see, it's got 2 in, 2 out, so it's got a 4 port, okay? Looks like that on some vehicles.
Those were two.
And as you can see on this type, it's got its own little temperature valve right inside of it. So it doesn't need that extra capillary tube. Chrysler system showing that cycling clutch and how that is mounted. On a fixed orifice tube, this one will just provide a restriction that separates high and low side pressures. The tube, the refrigerant undergoes a rapid expansion, changes from a warm, high pressure liquid to a cold, low pressure liquid. The orifice tube is located between the condenser and the evaporator inlet. And it's going to be inside of a hard aluminum tubing that goes into the evaporator. It's going to have a place where it separates right here, so you can just unscrew this, pull the hoses apart, pull that out of there once you discharge the system, obviously. You don't ever want to open the system. Well, there's pressure on it. The compressor performs the following functions. Compresses the low pressure gas refrigerant from the evaporator into a high pressure gas, raises the temperature of it, acts as a pump to circulate refrigerant. The major reason you have oil in the system. Different types of compressors. positive displacement, variable displacement. Positive displacement we've talked about before with pumps. Displaces a constant uniform volume of refrigerant for each revolution or operating cycle. The variable displacement uses the swash plate, changes its angle or the stroke of the piston for more or less cooling. Example of that you'll see in the book as well. This is going to show you another internal part of the compressor. These use a reed valve, which is a one-way check valve. Again, you don't have to worry too much about the inside of the compressor, but you just kind of know how they work and what's what. This is the one that uses the swash plate. As you can see, as that rotates, this constantly changes angles like this, right? So when it does that, it moves these little arms here, or you could call these the connecting rods, and these the pistons. It's just kind of works like a little engine. And that's what one actually looks like if you were to cut it open. It's a long chapter, isn't it? Okay. Okay. We're almost done. And we'll take a break before we do the quiz, since we're a little bit past that. Okay. Your compressor controls. Low pressure switch prevents the air conditioning compressor from being engaged when the pressure is too low. Basically, these switches just help keep the compressor from being damaged. If the high side pressure gets too high, usually above 375, which is extremely high, it will shut the compressor off, keep from damage in the system. So pressure too high, pressure too low, compressor won't come on, all right? Some of them have a power steering switch. I don't see that too much anymore. If it has hydraulic power steering, it may have a switch that shuts the compressor off if the pressure gets too high in the system during when's your power steering pressure the highest? When you're parking, right? You're barely moving, you turn the steering wheel, there's no rolling resistance reduction from moving the vehicle. So your power steering switch will shut the compressor off in that situation. Prevent damage to the system. Okay. Let's just go ahead and take a break now. We'll do the quiz when we get back in about 15 minutes. So about, what, 25 after?